evening, everyone, and welcome to the Woodlands Community Centre. Just some housekeeping before we begin. We are not expecting the fire alarm to sound this evening, but if it does, please leave the building through the fire exit and meet outside at the fire assembly point. Councillors will be using their devices to access the agenda for this meeting. We always welcome people to speak at the meeting, and we have got no members of the public present. However, we have got a written representation, which I will come to. I don't really need to say anything about anybody speaking today. The meeting, however, will be recorded and it will be uploaded to the Council's YouTube channel. If any members of the public who are not here but wouldn't like to be recorded, they can let somebody know. Moving swiftly on to item 1, which is apologies. I'm going to ask Catherine. Catherine, have we got any apologies?
We do. We have apologies from Councillor Paul.
Thank you very much. Okay. Public participation. This is the opportunity for persons not on the local items not on our agenda to be participated, and we have received one from a Mr. Rob Armstrong Collett, and I'm going to ask Kitty to read it.
Thank you, Chair. Members, thank you for your time and hopefully your help and assistance in trying to secure the necessary tree planting at Cllr's Copse in Horton Heath, following its unfortunate destruction. I, along with the whole community, was deeply saddened when the trees at Cllr's Copse were illegally felled and a bonfire made, and I was very pleased at the time with the swift measures taken by the Council in first stopping further destruction and taking subsequent legal action. That left me very hopeful that replanting of trees would take place very soon. How wrong was I? I have been left very disappointed ever since with the apparent lack of any action in securing any replacement trees being planted, and all the time it is the community who are losing out. I would ask the council work is being done to ensure that these trees are planted and to provide a timetable for completion of the works. I have kept in touch with local councillors via social media, and whilst I am thankful for them looking into this, the responses have not secured any planting. We are told that the weather is either too wet or dry. How do we win? That agreement is required with the owners of the pipeline within the site. Has this been secured? And that a schedule of planting is awaited from the landowner. What is being done to source this? Can I ask that the Council looks into this matter as a matter of increased priority to secure the replanting and ensure that necessary management of the trees is undertaken once they are planted to ensure they do not die? I would be pleased if a statement could be made to the community about what is happening, perhaps posted on the Council's website or via other publication. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kitty. We don't usually say anything at this point, do we? But you may make a comment, Michelle.
I understand the gentleman's frustration, I truly do. But I think, this is where I think comms are necessary, because actually I have been in touch with Phil Wiseman and work has never stopped trying to secure the planting. And I just think it's unhelpful that people think it's the council that's delaying things rather than constant legal wrangling in the background. But our officers are doing so much to try and secure the planting. Unfortunately, Mr. Barney and his legal team aren't necessarily playing ball. But I think Phil Wiseman needs to be commended for what he is doing. But I think it would be helpful if comms could put something out to say it is still being dealt with, so that it's not that we're not trying, it's just legalities are holding things up still.
Thank you, Michelle. I absolutely agree with you. It isn't the council's responsibility, unfortunately, and I know that the planning enforcement officers are doing their utmost to get it secured. I was going to suggest that we ask firstly, that somebody from planning provides a response so that the community is aware of actually whose responsibilities lie where, and that, yes, something on the website would be very helpful, and things that we can all share as well, because we're all contacted on this matter. So, yeah, it's a very good observation. Thank you. There's nothing else, is there? No, thank you. Okay, so moving on to item 3, which is the declarations of interest. Do councillors have any declarations of interest they wish to make? And if so, can you please indicate now, or when called, please state the nature and reason. And if anything becomes apparent to you during the meeting, do please let us know. Cllr Couldrey.
Thank you. It's quite difficult to tell, but the biodiversity map for the Stoke Park area seems to include some of my land. So I have an interest. I have no idea whether it's material or what it is, or whether I'm better off or worse off. I think if I get more butterflies, I'll consider myself better off. But anyway, so what I had a word with the officers earlier. I'm not going to vote on. I'm going to talk a lot, no doubt, but I'm not going to vote on the motion because I think that's probably the best way of just dealing with it. It won't make a lot of difference, I don't suppose.
No, that makes absolute sense. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 4, which is the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 31st of January 2024. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Tidridge and seconded by Councillor Broomfield, who were so quick, barely anything in it. Can I now approve these as a true record? All in favour? Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Right. Item 5 is the Chair's announcement. I have got a couple of things that I wanted to raise today. Firstly, I wanted to record my thanks to Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Services, who contacted me during a fire which occurred in Bishopstoke, which saw the burning down of one of the buildings on the Memorial Hall site. They were excellent at communicating. They were talking to me the whole time, letting me know what was occurring and what action was going to be taken next. And I think it's really commendable. There's not many organisations that, whilst they're in an emergency situation, are reaching out to people, but they did, and it was excellent. Another point to mention is that Bishopstoke is losing another post office. It lost its Longmead post office and general stores when that was turned into houses, and its post office at Spring Lane is on the consultation hub as closing. Unfortunately, that consultation is for information rather than as a way forward. But I think people need to be aware that, therefore, the only post office we now have is at Walesmead. Slightly better news in Fair Oak. It is hoped that the community cafe will open later in March, and I know members have been invited. And that's all I wanted to say today. Oh, no, there was one other thing, which is that this may be our last meeting with Councillor Tidridge and Councillor Broomfield. And I don't know whether either of them are standing again or not, but I do want it recorded that their work has been exemplary for the last years. So it would be wonderful if they do stand, but if they don't, I want it noted that this committee thanks them for everything they've done. Now, we go on to the substantive items for today. Item 6. This is a motion to respond to Eastleigh Borough Council's public consultation on biodiversity, which is the aspect that Cllr Couldrey mentioned his interest in. So can I invite Councillor Tidridge to move the motion? I'll get you to do that formally because you have 10 minutes. And do you have a seconder? Councillor Broomfield, thank you. So Councillor Tidridge, you have 10 minutes to move your motion. And Councillor Broomfield, would you like to speak immediately afterwards, or would you like to reserve your right to speak? Thank you. Okay, Councillor Tidridge.
Of efficiency. You've got it in front of you. I also emailed it to all members in advance. I have to read it. Okay. So my motion is that the local area committee for Bishopstoke, Ferrick and Horton Heath will submit a response to Eastleigh Borough Council's public consultation on biodiversity. Now, I've sent around a proposed wording for what this response could be, and I do not intend to read that out tonight. I don't think that's necessarily an appropriate use of this committee's time. However, what I would like to do is to propose that we treat this as a draft. If we do agree to send a response to this consultation, we may vote otherwise. But if we vote to do that, what I propose is we make some notes tonight and we delegate to the chair and vice chair to take those notes on board, rewrite appropriate passages if necessary, send it around by email to make sure that everybody is happy again, and then we will submit the response. So what I thought we could use tonight for is, first of all, to take the decision, well, not say first of all, but to take the decision, do we want to respond to this biodiversity survey? I would suggest yes, obviously, but also use this as an opportunity to summarise what members would like changed, if anything, in the document, so we can then agree to take it forward. I think that seems to me like it's a sensible way to do it. The reason why I'd really like us to respond to this consultation is biodiversity is incredibly important. Of all the environmental issues that we look at, there's lots of discussion of climate change, which is good. There is discussion of nature and wildlife, which is good, but biodiversity in the round is in a perilous state in the UK at the moment. The State of Nature report, which is something which is rerun every year, summarises where we are in terms of natural habitats. The UK is very densely populated, and therefore the open spaces, the woodlands, the space for nature that we have is by definition very limited. That makes it even more precious, I would argue, in the context of the UK, of England, than it would be for many other nations. And so therefore, having a response to the biodiversity strategy feels eminently sensible to me. It's something we should be prioritising, not least because this council has passed a climate change and environmental emergency. Looking through the consultation, there's a lot to commend with it. It's great in terms of it covers off lots of areas of our borough that could be enhanced, that could be improved from a biodiversity perspective. The consultation response I've given focuses very much on the three priority areas for nature recovery identified that fall either entirely or partially within our joint wards boundary. So that would be Stoke Park, Itchen Valley and Wyvern and Knoll Park. And so therefore that's really been the focus on what I've been talking about here. I could have extended it to all the priority areas, but I would suggest that this committee has more of a specialist interest in those areas, those particular areas. In the same way as well, the links, I focus very much on the links that fall within our area. What does it mean? Well, I think one of the things I'd like to understand from the biodiversity strategy, which I've highlighted here, is I'd like to know what it means. There's a team of ecologists at the council who I'm sure will be working very hard to implement the strategy, but the sad truth is that they won't be able to do it by themselves. The council does not own all the land that it's identified. Great example is Stoke Park. Stoke Park is not just Stoke Park Farm as a priority area for nature recovery. It includes Upper Barn Copse, Crowd Hill Copse, owned and managed by the Woodland Trust. It includes a patch of land which I believe is owned by one of our members. It also includes a huge woodland which is owned and managed by Forestry England. So there's a whole host of different landowners involved. So therefore, the opportunity for that small team of ecologists to make a difference with that land is, by nature of land ownership, going to be limited. Although it is worth noting with that particular site, there was a big tranche of land which is owned directly by the council. And I think that's one of the things that I didn't really get from this report, from this strategy, particularly when it talked about resources. The other area that I think that there can be more made of it is how the strategy will interact with other stakeholders. not only those landowners that I've mentioned, but also conservation charities, in particular the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust. There's only mention once in this entire strategy of that organisation as being the source of a butterfly survey. There's no mention of any of the organisations I've already identified to protect as landowner. There's no mention particularly of Hampshire County Council, who also owns some of the land that's covered by this area. And it's one of these strategies where a team of ecologists at Eastleigh, even if they work their socks off, and I'm sure they will, obviously organic, carefully produced socks, even if they work their socks off, they're not going to be able to implement this strategy. They're going to need to engage lots of people across the community to be able to do that. I think that's probably the biggest thing for me that's missing. I particularly like to highlight that there are very few statutory designations. This council has only established one new local nature reserve in the last 10 years, and that was in the south of the borough at Wildon. And it would be great to see protections and statutory designations being boosted more as a way to ensure that the strategy is actually achieved. But I'm going to stop talking now, because I'd really like to hear from other members as to what you'd like to see changed, adapted. I sent this round really as a straw man in terms of very happy to change anything, and I just want to make sure it's something that everybody on the committee feels that they can sign up to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tidridge. Anybody like Cllr Marsh? Sorry, you have 5 minutes because it's a motion.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say thank you because you've already put a great deal of time and effort into this, and it's very obvious. And so I'd be more than happy to support this. And I think the recommendation that the Chair and Vice Chair finish it off, answer the meeting, is a sensible one, which I'd also support. So yes, I'm very happy, and I think it's crucial that we do protect the land in our area, and anything to make sure that biodiversity is improved should be encouraged. So thank you.
Councillor Couldrey.
Thank you. When I first saw this motion, I thought, oh God, this is, what's he going to say? And I was very glad to see this because it actually puts some sense into the motion. And though one can nitpick this, that, or the other, I think the thrust of it is very important and very good. And so I'm happy to let it go. Frankly, the Borough Council itself has got to do a lot more. It has to negotiate with other landowners to get them involved, and they are, by and large, very well motivated towards this, so it shouldn't be a problem. The other thing, of course, is it's got to drag in expertise from places like the Hampshire Wildlife Trust, the butterfly people, etc. Because if we can get a few insects going into this, there are a few things, anyway, there are a few things I'd like to see. Could we please ask the council to stop cutting those fields for hay and cutting the hedgerows to keep them all neat and tidy? We don't want it neat and tidy, we wanted a bit of biodiversity. The other thing, looking at this, these are all nitpicking point. I was very sceptical initially of wanting a local, a local park, was it? No, it wasn't a park. A nature reserve, or designating a special scientific interest. These seem to be very bureaucratic when you look at actually what needs to be done in order to get there. And they don't seem to carry a great deal of weight when they're there, but nonetheless they're useful because they're a trigger to make sure that the question of biodiversity is addressed, and addressed carefully and publicly. And so I'm moving away from my scepticism. I don't like sort of eating humble pie too much, but that's enough. The corridors. Corridors are very interesting because it's very important. I think that some of those corridors are things that, look, we're not going to be able to get a corridor down main roads with all that sort of thing. Yes, I appreciate that. But let's have, you know, we have the same problem with the bee and tree corridor, don't we, which is a sort of same idea, it is a slightly less enhanced thing. Connecting places is difficult. So I wouldn't be too, you know, let's try even if we have to have a bit of Church Road in it. So don't be too, but I do think that we need to get something around the north of Stoke Park down to Knoll Park. Now, there's not a lot of land there. Oh, well, there's a lot of land, but not a lot of stuff that's sort of ready sitting there. But I do think that would be a useful enhancement. And again, these things don't have to be all done yesterday. You know, it's an ambition. It's moving towards it. I don't think that this, you know, I think answering the strategy would be a very good idea. So basically, I'm in favour of it. I won't be voting for it because of the reasons I mentioned. And you know, there are a few things that one doesn't agree with, no doubt, but I haven't had time to get those all together. But it's a very useful step, and let's go for it because it's not going to do any harm, is it?
Thank you very much, Councillor Couldrey. I've got a couple of comments. I'm really pleased that we are responding, and we're responding as a committee. I think everything that we've said in our local area action plan, that we would put the environment first and foremost, so it's only appropriate that we do. Unlike Councillor Couldrey, I think that it's not something we should be working towards, and it is something we should have been doing yesterday, because we have now hit the over the 1.5 constant increase for a whole year. So the graph is not going on this one trajectory, it has exponentially sped up. So anything we can do is really, really important for future generations. Yeah, I'm really pleased we've also highlighted other organisations, because I'm also thinking about the newts and the reptiles, there's the Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Reptile Organisation who are fabulous. And we also know that if you want to increase biodiversity, you must bring in your bottom of the food chain, which is your insects, and it is because it brings in everything else, because they cannot survive. You can't bring in birds of prey if there aren't little birds for them to eat. So, yeah, I think this is very important, and I know that there was an initiative done to link the South Downs National Park to the New Forest National Park, which has just started, which is about creating a hedgerow between the two national parks, all the way to create this massive corridor. So when Councillor Couldrey mentioned getting connection from Stoke Park to Knoll Park, absolutely, and there are ways we can do it. And there are quick wins, because hedging, hugely important. So I love that Councillor Tidridge's response, and I'm most certainly supporting it. Thank you. Councillor Broomfield, would you like to reply?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to second this motion. I think it's a very good piece of work and covers the ground admirably, and I certainly agree that we need more cooperative working with relevant authorities. The only question I have is in paragraph 6, when it describes the rate of increase of sinks as being both unambitious and potentially unachievable. It seems to set a very low bar if you're not being ambitious and you're still not going to achieve it. So I think maybe we need to seek a bit more clarity on how the targets that are set are going to be achieved, given the previous targets weren't achieved. So apart from that, I'm absolutely fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Broomfield. Now I can go back to the original proposer. Councillor Tidridge, would you like to reply?
I've spotted at least one typo, so we can definitely improve it a little bit. But what I'll do is I'll pick up with the chair. We'll rework the rework it or send it round again before we send it in. But if we're able to vote tonight on our ambition to send this in, and then delegating to me and Lou to then actually do the sending, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've had a proposal, we've had a seconder, all in favour of supporting the motion, and obviously with one abstention, which we are aware about. Any abstentions? Thank you, Councillor. That's carried. Thank you, members. Right, moving on to motion 7. And again, this is something which the proposer will have to read out in full. Just give you a second to find it on the system. Again, the same process will go forward. So the proposer is Councillor Tidridge, and do you have a seconder to your motion? Oh, thank you, Cllr Broomfield. So you've now got 10 minutes to speak on your original and move your motion. And Cllr Broomfield, would you like to retain the right to reply at the end? Thank you.
I'll push the button this time, that will help, won't it?
Thank you very much. You have 10 minutes, Councillor Tidridge.
Thank you. So this motion is that the Local Area Committee for Bishopstoke, Ferrick and Horton Heath request clarity from Eastleigh Borough Council on the criteria being used to determine whether a decision is to be taken by a Local Area Committee or the Joint Area Committee. Clarification is also requested on which assets are to be managed by Joint Area Committees, by Local Area Committees or by other parts of Eastleigh Borough Council. Okay.
You can talk on the motion as well if you want to
Thank
add
you.
anything additional.
What this goes back to is in full council on the 26th of December 2023, the council leader proposed a new joint area committee structure following the peer review. He stated that he anticipated that it would be used very rarely. He made that very, very clear. And as such, I was sat next to Councillor Cllrs on that occasion. Neither of us felt particularly concerned about it because we were told it would be something which would be used incredibly rarely. But skipping back to full council on 24th of February 2022, the council leader announced that a proposed budget enhancement from the independent group to allocate funds to establish a local nature reserve at Stoke Park Farm was not appropriate for full council because it was a decision that could be taken by the BIFO Local Area Committee. The minutes read that the independent group withdrew Amendment 1 because local area committees have delegated powers to allocate developer contributions. What has followed is really confusing to me. This local area committee passed a motion to establish a local area reserve on Stoke Park Farm, but this has not happened yet. Indeed, we've been told it's not a matter for the LAC. We were told that we would be permitted to take a decision on the suitable alternative natural green space, the SANG. This proposal being put forward by council for Stoke Park Farm, but apparently this will now be taken by the Joint Area Committee instead. So I think we need clarification. I'm sure that the council leader did not intentionally mislead full council in 2022 by indicating that Stoke Park Farm would be the responsibility of this LAC, and I'm sure he did not intentionally mislead full council in 23 in his assertion that the JAC would be required very rarely. If the JAC, i.e. the Joint Area Committee, is to be responsible for strategic decisions, I think we need a definition of what types of decisions these will be. If it's covering certain classes of assets, I think we need a definition of what the assets will be. So, for example, the hub, the point, places leisure, Itching Valley Country Park, which qualify as strategic and will therefore be moved away from the LACs that currently cover them. Although I think places leisure actually comes under corporate anyway, but the other ones I think come under the local area committees. I think this committee needs reassurance that strategic is not simply defined as any decision covered by this committee that isn't planning or pertaining to any asset that happens to be within our combined areas wards. And I'm sorry for being so cynical, but that's a little bit how it feels. I propose that we formally write to the Chief Executive and Council Leader the letter to be sent by the Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tidridge. Would any member like to comment? Okay, I would like to say something on this because I do remember being told very vociferously at full council that all decisions were to be taken by this local area committee when it came to the matters surrounding Stoke Park Farm. We were asked very specifically to withdraw, which we did, on the understanding that this committee had its responsibility. I am very concerned about a nasty precedent being set where items are being removed from the control of a local area committee. Even the airport went to Eastleigh Local Area Committee. And it does begin to feel like if there is a feeling the answer that they want may not be secured, that that decision will be taken away, effectively wiping out the democratic mandate of this committee and others. So I am massively concerned about the direction this council is taking. I already have concerns about transparency, and I think that this is yet another opportunity to suppress the voice of our residents and to suppress the people that have been elected to represent them. So I have got grave concerns, so I'm 100% supporting this motion. Would anybody else like to talk? Councillor Broomfield.
I feel I ought to say something as I'm seconding the motion. I'm more than happy to support it. I don't have an issue with the Joint Area Committee per se, but I think the lack of clarity about what its remit is unhelpful. I actually spoke to the leader the morning of the full council meeting. He and I were at a county meeting, and I mentioned to him about it, and his words were it would meet very rarely. And the inference I drew from that was it would meet very rarely, not that it would actually take over control of certain things which are really quite important on a local area. And if we're talking about something which is of massive strategic interest, then obviously one Horton Heath really ticks every single box there is going. And that's had its own local area committee set up some years ago, but if there is a joint area committee, there could be a case made, I would suspect, for that to take over running the Horton Heath Development Management Committee. So I think I'm not against the Joint Area Committee, as I say. I think in many ways it's a good idea, because obviously one harks back to the airport vote, which I'm pleased to say I wasn't a member of the council for, thank God. But seeing how that went and then very quickly got referred back to full council to correct the decision, which in the 20-odd years I've been involved with local politics, I believe has never happened before. So I think if we need to have strategic decisions, absolutely yes, but I think we need clarity on what those strategic decisions are and how and by whom the decision that something should be referred to a joint area committee. And I think it's the by whom that's also important. I think it's just a lack of clarity in the whole process that needs to be ironed out. So I'm not against the JAC, but I do think we need a little bit more background as to what, why and how it's going to work. So I'm happy to support and vote for this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Broomfield. Councillor Tidridge, you have the right. Oh, you missed your opportunity. Can I use Chair's discretion? Because obviously you're not supposed to speak after the second, then because but you can, Councillor Couldrey.
When is the question? I mean, we know what the answer is going to be. The answer to this is going to be, number one, the Constitution says that that a majority of councillors can press up and move to the GAC. I'm trying to find the bit and I can't quite find it, which is. And the second thing is, it's the senior officer. I think it's the one for the Granfield's post, but I'm not sure. And the leader of the council can refer it. So the political implications of that I leave to you. I couldn't possibly comment. So this is just a question of kicking back. Fine, kick back. I'm not going to support it, but kick back.
Councillor Tidridge, would you like to?
Or can't. Actually, I will be supporting this because I do agree that it's clarity that we're looking for. And I sat in that meeting where we were very clearly told that it was a local area decision, and then it suddenly wasn't, and then it was, and it wasn't. So actually, just all we are asking for is clarity on, as Steve said, what, who, where, when. And I think it's important that we get it in writing. And if it's there, then we need the transparency of it.
Councillor Tidridge.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for responding. I'm very glad that Councillor Couldrey and Councillor Marsh were given the opportunity to speak, despite the order being a bit out of it. It's an area where I think is clarity that we need. If we know what we're allowed to look at, what we're allowed to cover, we'll stick to that. But we just need clarity about what that is. I was particularly disappointed, to be honest, because Eastleigh Borough Council has always talked very confidently about how local area committees are at the heart of what it does. Local area committees are absolutely intrinsic to Eastleigh Borough Council's approach. And so therefore, for us to be in the position where we're not sure whether or not an asset that falls entirely within our joint areas wards does not border any other ward within Eastleigh Borough Council isn't to be covered by this local area committee is mystifying, to be honest. And I think I just really appreciate some clarity on this. So if that letter can go ahead, if we vote positively, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tidridge. So we have a proposer and a seconder. All in favour? Everyone against? Any abstentions? That's agreed. Thank you, members. Moving on to item 8, which is the motion for a feasibility study exploring the framework of the Lowton Nature Reserve Management Plan for Stoke Park Farm, which has been proposed by Councillor Tidridge. And can I ask who is seconding you? Councillor Broomfield, thank you very much. Councillor Tidridge, Councillor Broomfield, would you like to reserve your right to speak? You would, thank you. Councillor Tidridge, you have 10 minutes to move your motion, including speaking it in full. Thank you.
Thank you. The motion is that this local area committee for Bishopstoke, Farwick and Horton Heath should commission a feasibility study to explore how the framework of a local nature reserve management plan for Stoke Park Farm site, this committee's stated aim for the site, can be congruent with Eastleigh Borough Council's strategic objectives, including for nitrate offsets and biodiversity net gain. I really want to try and move this forward. We've taken a very clear decision. I do appreciate actually Councillor Couldrey's comments about how Stoke Park Farm moving to a local nature reserve can sound like it's a very bureaucratic thing. But the more as time progresses, the more I'm convinced that the local nature reserve framework could actually really help the council in terms of moving forward with this particular site. Just a couple of examples. There's the motion going through presumably to the Joint Area Committee on the proposal to build, to create ponds for great crested newts. Get that right? Nested crested. Great crested newts. I was disturbed to read a comment from local wildlife expert George Baker on social media today, stating that there's actually been a concern raised by Natural England about that proposal, that if it's not done properly, it might actually cause damage to the itchin in terms of runoff, presumably, in times of heavy rain. And I think that just really highlights why a local nature reserve management plan could actually help. If there is a framework, one of the key parts of establishing a local nature reserve is there has to be a plan for the whole site. It doesn't mean to say that every aspect of the site has to be a top-performing habitat for nature. Wilden, for example, includes a road, a major road. So it's not like everything within it has to completely be maximised in terms of biodiversity gain and nature protection and natural protection. But what it does mean is that there has to be a plan for everything in the site. So there could be a plan for the great crested newt ponds. There could be a plan for a sang. There could be a plan for all sorts of things, increased trails, other things which I'm sure the community would absolutely welcome. But the idea is that there's a plan for it. This will then make it easier for the council when dealing with nitrate offset payments, when dealing with biodiversity net gain payments, in terms of there's a plan to refer to. Give us your biodiversity net gain payments. It will help because within this plan we've got this area identified for creating a new mixed woodland, and your funds can go into that. Here you go. It will make it easier. It also will help to reassure organisations like Natural England that things are happening properly. And it will act as a massive reassurance to our local residents that the council has the interests of biodiversity, of the community, of wildlife, of the environment on a wider basis for the entire site. It will certainly help residents have an idea that there is a plan for the entire site. One of the pieces of feedback I'm sure we've all had is, well, what's happening? The SANG recommendation covers a comparatively small part of the farm. So what about the rest of it? And I think that if the idea is with this feasibility study, obviously for it to be a proper feasibility study, it must start with being prepared to find one way or the other. But I'm hoping that at least exploring how the framework of local nature reserve can help the Borough Council to achieve its strategic objectives. So that's the reason for proposing it. And I'd really like to try and get this going as a way to try and move this idea forwards. We expressed our desire, and we expressed it because we could see how this would be of real use, real benefit, not only to the environment, not only to local residents, but to the Borough Council. And that's why we're proposing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tidridge. Would any Cllr Couldrey?
Thank you. I entirely agree we need a feasibility study. We should have... I'm terribly bad at... You've endured 3 council meetings of mine. You've only got one more to do, and then you'll be able to hear what the mayor's saying. The feasibility study is essential. It's too late, but it's got to be done. The real problem is a proper feasibility study is going to be very expensive, or quite expensive, and we don't have much money. This should be what Eastleigh Borough Council is doing. So I would like to move an amendment that says the local area committee for, or us, request Eastleigh Borough Council to commission a feasibility study, blah, blah, blah.
Amendments can be moved at any point after the original motion is moved and seconded. If the amendment is to be debated, do I not have to get a proposer and a seconder for it? Yeah. So as an amendment has been moved, then Cllr Couldrey will need a seconder. Cllr Marsh. Cllr Marsh, you have the right to speak now or later in debate. Okay, thank you. We're now going to debate the amendment by councillors who can speak for up to 5 minutes. Councillors who have already spoken on the original motion can also speak on the amendment. And the mover of the original motion has a right of reply to sum up. For the avoidance of doubt, the mover of the amendment has no right of reply. Then we vote on the amendment for, against, abstain. Obviously, if we do that, it will be carried or lost. Councillor Tidridge.
I'd just like to state that I'd be very happy to accept the amendment, which I believe makes the process a little bit less painful.
Thank you, Councillor Tidridge. So our original motion has the 4 additional words in that follow after our local area committee to request Borough Council to commission that that the local area committee requests that Eastleigh Borough Council commission. So that's the bit that's been added. Excellent. So, okay, so for the avoidance of doubt, we now vote on the amendment as is. So all in favour as amended. That's unanimous. Therefore, the motion has carried. Is that correct? And you didn't have my spiel. I missed my spiel opportunity. Oh. No, it says if the amendment is lost, then the debate continues.
Yeah, but I think we still need to actually vote on the motion.
Down here.
Oh, okay.
So you still get to have your spiel, it's just...
No, it says if the amendment is lost, then debate continues.
Yeah, and then if the amendment is carried, then the vote moves.
Oh,
It's moved. And then so
okay.
no.
So now we move back. Yeah, so now we move back to say, that because the amendment was carried, now we move to vote on the original motion as amended. Yeah, all for? Anybody against? Excellent. Now it's agreed. No, I know. I just feel that Cllr Couldrey is very happy knowing that he's got home 10 minutes earlier just by moving that amendment. So now I move on to item 9, which is our planning appeals. Can I ask that we note the appeals as on the agenda? Yep, thank you, members. So that concludes this meeting. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for your listening. The next meeting is due to be held here at the Woodlands on Wednesday the 19th of June at 6:30 p.m. Thank you, good evening, and I'd love to think that I might get you all back in the new council year.